Welcome back to the Ross Bolen podcast. I am your host, Ross Bolen, joined as always by your co-host, Mr. Jared Borislow, aka J-Bone. Today, Jared and I have a guest joining us, comedian Jamie Kilstein, for a special episode to kickstart Mental Health Awareness Month, which is every May. Mental Health Awareness Month, also known as Mental Health Month, has been observed in May in the United States since 1949. 1 in 4 people suffer from mental illness, and I am one of those people, as many of you well know. So is Jamie, and as such, I wanted to throw a trigger warning up front here because we will be discussing depression, suicide, cancellation, politics, the left, the right, the middle, and everything in between. We are also going to talk a ton about stand-up comedy, since Jamie has been doing that for over 20 years, and it is one of my great obsessions in life. There are many, many, many jokes that are going to be throughout the course of our conversation as well, but I just wanted to let everybody know up front. All right, we're getting heavy today, so let's get it. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Birddogs, making the most comfortable shorts in the world with the built-in underwear you know and love for living life and making love. It's like, why wear shorts with underwear when you can wear even better shorts with built-in underwear, thus creating less laundry, thus saving the planet, thus making you a hero who's also better looking and more comfortable. Birddogs, you silly bastard. But did you know they make pants as well? Pants for work, pants for play, pants for golf. Their new joggers are next level comfortable. I've owned a lot of joggers in my life, probably 30 pairs of joggers. None better than the Birddogs joggers that have completely changed the game. Who the fuck likes being uncomfortable? If you're not wearing Birddogs this summer, you probably poop with your pants on. It's time to upgrade to the shorts and pants of the future. Your balls will thank you. Go to birddogs.com, enter promo code ROSS at checkout, and they'll throw in a free Birddogs Yeti tumbler. They found Yeti's $90 tumbler, they copied it, and now Birddogs is giving it away to you with your purchase when you use code ROSS at checkout. That's birddogs.com, code ROSS, and boom, a free Birddogs tumbler with your pair of Birddogs. You will not take these things off. I promise you. Just use code ROSS when you check out on birddogs.com. Now we are joined by today's guest. Wait, how do I pronounce your last name? Kilstein or Kilstein?
Kilstein.
Kilstein.
Yeah.
Told you.
You should have believed in yourself.
Jamie Kilstein.
Yeah.
Now I believe in myself.
Hell yeah, dude.
The host of A Fuck Up's Guide to Life, stand-up comic. How are you, sir?
I'm good, buddy. I'm so glad we're finally meeting and hanging. We became sad boy best friends on DM.
We did.
It was a lot of, hey, are you okay?
Yeah, we both hit a depressive state at about the same time, somewhere in the midst of the pandemic.
Yep.
And you're one of the first stand-ups I talked to one-on-one.
Oh, really?
About mental health stuff. For the most part, my experience with stand-ups that I don't know personally.
Yeah. That they're all in denial about their depression,
or they don't want to talk about it as if they're only talking about that. Like if they're doing jokes and talking about that, they can do it, but they don't want to talk just about that.
Weird.
So that's unusual. But yeah, we've known each other online for quite a while.
For sure.
It's good to sit down in person.
Yeah.
Did I see on Twitter you said you did 7 shows this past weekend?
I had a breakup, and it's the most successful I've ever been. I have jumped from codependent relationship to codependent relationship.
Sure.
And this last breakup, I was heartbroken. We were talking about marriage the same day. She said she wanted to marry me. Then that night was this is moving too fast. And I was like, but you said you wanted to marry me. It was like she broke up with herself. And it was very weird. And then she also did a thing. I don't know if you've experienced this where... and we're on good terms. I'm not shit-talking her, but it was a lot where everything is great, and then suddenly you break up and it sounds like you're talking to a different person. Where literally that night, it almost sounded like she was speaking through a divorce lawyer, where she said, I wish you well in your endeavors. And I was like, you don't fucking use the word endeavor. And so I was super depressed.
Best of luck in all future endeavors.
It was, yes, sincerely, Amy. What is happening? And it was horrible. And then I just had that moment of do I kill myself or hustle? And I booked this trip to New York, and everything went so well. Like I did a bunch of my favorite podcasts. Like I finally we made this happen. And I've just been doing shows, and I realized how much I have thrown into relationships. Some I think's good, right? Like just trying to be a good boyfriend, but a lot being codependent, sacrificing my shit. And now I'm just, oh, this is what happens when I'm single. I can do 7 shows in 2 days. Like, dude, it was one of the most fun weekends of my fucking life.
You're speaking on something that I'm not only familiar with through my own experience, but just also I talk to a lot of different people about relationships. And codependency is something that is like, it's one of those things I think everybody knows the word.
Yeah.
But nobody really stops to think about whether or not their relationship is codependent. And as somebody who's certainly had codependent relationships in the past, like the biggest thing for me over the past couple of years that I figured out as I went through a divorce at the end of 2019 into 2020.
Yeah.
And so, similarly, I had that moment where it was like, well, my life is ruined. I blew up my life. It's all over, right? Do I fucking kill myself or do I go try to do more, right? And I wasn't as quick to be able to harness what you're talking about harnessing right now, where you can kind of, I'm guessing it was mostly out of necessity.
It was
that you
out
had
of
to
necessity,
throw yourself into it.
But also, remember, 8 years ago, I had a divorce. So, like, I went through that.
Yeah.
Like, this was just sort of a wonderful relationship that I thought was, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, trust me, I'm learning from fucking having done it many times before.
Well, and that's one of the things about stand-up comedy that is most fascinating to me. Like, as a guy who I have never done stand-up, not a single time in my entire life, but I have watched... Oh God, I don't even know. Like thousands of hours of it across Netflix, HBO, and the like, right?
I can tell you've never done stand-up because you're so happy about it.
But stand-up in and of itself, it seems like I'll throw out a comic that I'm not necessarily like the biggest fan of, but I saw Chris D'Elia live once, right?
Yeah.
And he was talking about how it's funny because all stand-up comedians are depressed or suicidal or have substance abuse issues or are recovering alcoholics or heroin addicts. And he had none of that, right?
Yeah.
Which just ironically, it came out later that he had other issues that he was dealing with. But the point is, most people do stand-up comedy, and most people that are funny do it as a means of self-maintenance, repair, and therapy, right?
Yeah,
it
dude.
serves as therapy.
For sure. And I mean... I was just a friend of mine. I was in the car talking to them before I came in here, was asking me about my friendship with Robin Williams because he, got me everything. And there was a moment that I realized I kind of want to talk about this on stage, but he talked me out of suicide, which is a real fucked up moment.
You're talking about like the Robin Williams.
Yeah,
like
yeah. That would be really funny if I was name dropping just
another guy,
just some fucking road hack from West Virginia. He's a prop comic named Robin Williams Jr.
I saw a quote from him on your website.
Isn't
Robin
that wild?
Williams. Yeah, and I was just like, wait. Is this was that a joke or is this a real quote this man threw at you?
I still have the fucking email.
I'd put that at the top of my website as well.
Yep. I would.
So you knew Robin Williams for real?
For real. And he would talk to me about my depression. I would call him and stuff like that. And so obviously there was a moment when he kills himself that you go, well, I'm fucked.
Sure.
And... he was the reason I didn't quit comedy, and then he died, and then I quit comedy, and all this stuff. And so, and with him, it was this disease, but he even struggled with substances
before
that. And, and with Chris, it's like, that stuff came out, and it's like, there was still some kind of tick. And I mean, I remember back when I would do a ton of interviews, and people would always be like, hey, were you the class... People who didn't know comedy, they would be like, were you the class clown? And I was like, nope, the class clown tried to beat the shit out of me, called me gay, bullied me. Like, the comics are the ones who, for the most part, like, a lot of times the class clowns are the hacks. They're bullies. They're, like, shouting stereotypes or shitty movie quotes or whatever.
Yeah, most of the funniest people I knew from high school aren't funny anymore.
Exactly.
They're just regular adults.
Yes, exactly. And and we oftentimes were the nerds, the ones journaling, the emo kids, the sad boys,
outcasts.
Maybe we tried to be funny. I always tried to be funny, but I wasn't. I'm the least funny of my siblings. Even this, when you were like, all right, we're going to talk about stand-up, I'm like, all right, but it's going to get sad quickly. And then I was like, and then my friend killed himself. Like, dude, we're 2 minutes in.
Hey, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. This is perfect.
Oh, good. Yeah. My birthday month, hilariously enough.
Huzzah.
And I turned 40 next week. Something like that.
Oh, shit. Congratulations.
Isn't that crazy? And so, yeah, man, it does come from that. And I feel like the moment when I think back to why I'm a comic, it's not, I wish it was, you know, me and my friends were just fucking smoking weed, watching Bill Hicks, but it wasn't. It was my mom was getting arrested and me and my brothers were horrified upstairs in the house, and it would be this like awkward, tense silence, and then someone would make a joke, and it would always be an offensive joke because given the situation, it is about a drunk mom or it is about this terrible circumstance or whatever. And then we would all start laughing, and that laughter just caused such like a relief feeling, such just this ice-breaking feeling.
To release, yeah.
Yeah, that once that happens, you go, okay, now we can figure things out. You know, like even when I'm offensive on stage or when I would talk about the war after 9/11 or when I would talk about whatever, it was never trying to be provocative. It was like, no, let's laugh at this situation that's really scary and hard. And then no matter what side of the aisle you're on, that should be able to get us just chill enough where we can fucking start talking about it like reasonable adults and not people who fight on Twitter all day like maniacs.
Yeah, regular discourse, which is, I mean, it's one of the things that's most difficult about the world today is that's very hard to accomplish. Like making jokes about either side results in just nothing but toxicity instead of what I feel like more traditionally would result in like discourse and a coming together. It's a weird time,
dude,
frankly, for stand-up.
Not to like burn bridges so soon, but I remember I did a couple big right-wing shows, which I'd never done before last year. And I got a ton, and my basic premise being, hey, I'm on the left, we think differently, but, you know, let's all talk like normal human beings, right? And I got hundreds of emails just like, yo, I don't agree with you, but this was great. You know, like, I'm going to follow you. Consider me a fan. And then George Floyd was killed. And I posted some pretty basic, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't like, you know, like the white devil. Like, I was like just pretty basic. Like, hey, does that kill black people? And so many of these people just flipped
on you, dude.
Just like that, where they're like, oh, it looks like feminist cuck's back. And I'm like, wait a second. Just because I'm like, talking about being a little more nuanced, just because I can go on a right-wing show doesn't mean that suddenly I'm a racist or I'm, you know what I mean? Like,
what I've found is that politically people want to, like, the right people that view themselves as on the right or people that view themselves as on the left, they want to be able to lay claim to you.
Yes.
They want to be able to say, this person is with us and we agree with everything he says. And the second you go off that script, they're fucking infuriated. My example was that this show was significantly larger before our president, before this current one. And then I went through my divorce and I got to a point where I was just like, fuck it, I don't care anymore.
I don't care. That's what I'm
I said
now.
Whatever I wanted for about 6 months. And
that's totally where I'm at
I watched
now.
like 70,000 people be like, well, then fuck you and leave. And I was, at the time, I was like, I really didn't care. I really, really didn't care.
Yeah.
And now in hindsight, I care because it feels like I lost access to those people. Like, I'm not going to have their ear anymore to attempt to bend it in any way. So what the fuck have I done is sort of how I feel about it now. I've forgiven myself and moved on. But the point
let's get them back. Build a wall, baby. Right? Abortion. That is murder. Sorry.
No, it's perfect for us in Texas. We're moving slowly backwards. And I am going to move with the state in the opposite direction of progress.
The access thing is such a good point because it's like, I don't give a shit about numbers. I just feel, and I think me and you are really similar on this, where it's like, we're just trying to be decent, nice people.
I just want to connect with people.
And it's like, if I have their ear, like anytime I do a live stand-up show, I have this whole bit about like mushrooms bringing us together and stuff like that. But it starts off by being like, I know there are liberals and conservatives in this audience. And I know that we all just laughed at the same shit, which is like me fucking being good at eating pussy because I have dad issues or whatever the fuck it is, whatever stand-up it. Like, we all laugh together. And it's like, hey, maybe if we brought that into discourse and remembered that, like, yeah, out in the street, it's like we're all trying to take care of our family. I mean, most of us are just political, but it's either that's the way we were raised or that's the way we were raised and we rebelled against our parents. Like, we don't, you know, I could have been a fucking neoconservative if I was born somewhere dead. Like, who the fuck knows, right?
Yeah, your life experience and you know, location shapes you massively in terms of what you believe in.
I also think if you are putting that much on labels, You know, I think, like, for me, when I was super political, I was trying to fucking cancel people. It was the most depressed I ever was. I was in, like, a failing marriage. I was lashing out on Twitter. And I think that is a lot of people, because I've been there, where it's, yes,
With all the negativity.
Yeah, where it's, I care about political issues. I care about social justice. Like, of course. But when that's your whole fucking identity, is I'm screaming at people on Twitter. And I mean, I've said this before, but I mean, when I was the most loud politically, I wasn't even the best. I'm such a better person now, and a kinder person, and do more for people now, and I'm less political. Whereas back in the day, you know, someone would be like, Jamie, your mom's on the phone. And I'd be like, tell her I can't talk. I'm tweeting about feminism. You know what I mean? Like, it was a show. It was performative.
Right. It became like the focus of you almost, right?
Yeah.
Where too much of your identity becomes wrapped up in this thing that's like almost you have no control over it. Like, none of us do. We don't have control over what happens politically in this country. We are like individual people with our own beliefs and whatever, but like it always makes me think of, like, if you're in the grocery store, right, and you're walking around in the aisles, everybody in there is of different political beliefs and has all these different ideas about who they are as a person, and it doesn't become some shit-slinging contest, but online, everything does because of the anonymity or the wall of internet between you and the people you're interacting with or whatever. And
that's why whenever I'm at Whole Foods, I ask people how they feel about gun control.
Of course,
aisle to aisle.
Have to.
Yeah,
Have to.
excuse me.
Absolutely. But it's like it's like we're still trying to figure out. I mean, because I went through the same thing where there was a point where I was way too political online. Yeah. And it's like we're all still trying to figure out in this new age of the internet in 2022, and where I think just as Americans, most of us are more, on the right and left are more aware of the issues than we ever have been because of the internet and the 24-hour and 24/7 news cycle shit. And we're still trying to figure out exactly how to harness that. Yeah. And and this is, to take it back to stand-up, it's the thing that to me, I'm most jealous of guys like you that get to go up on stage for this reason. It's detached from that. There is no, like, every joke I make is online. Yeah. Every single fucking one. And there's no real world IRL place for me to not have to worry about all the toxicity and bullshit that comes with the internet.
Dude, so I've never talked about this because I'm going through it right now. So when I started comedy, the guys I looked up to were the most, like, offensive comics. And, you know, I mean, my old interviews, I'm talking about Carlin, I'm talking about, like, you should be able to say whatever you want on stage, blah, blah, blah. Then I got, like, super political, lefty, whatever, and
you were woke.
I was woke. And those two factions clash. And I remember even after my divorce, I felt like I burned bridges in comedy, and I was like, those guys hate me because, you know, I pulled back sort of the comedy ethos of just free speech and shit like that. And those were the dudes who reached out to me to make sure I was okay. It was like fucking Rogan and Doug Stanhope, who's like super fucking edgy. People like that. And recently, I would still consider myself like pretty fucking progressive. But throwing myself into the Austin the Austin stand-up scene, going back home to New York and doing the most offensive shows that old woke Jamie would have assumed the audience was filled with just like literal Nazis, like just racist monsters, right? Because you listen to their podcasts or their stand-up shows and they're dropping all the words that would get us canceled.
Right.
It was some of the fucking kindest, sweetest, just nerdy comedy fans. And I just forgot that, ironically, comedy is actually this safe space where if you're not saying it hatefully, now don't get me wrong, there are like, especially new comedians or open mic comedians who are trying to be edgy or who are trying to, you know, like, there's no substance to it.
Sure.
Right? So there's a comic.
You got to have a message.
That's
Gotta
it.
have something to it.
Or like authenticity. So I just did this guy, Jim Norton, who was one of my favorite comics. He has a show on Sirius, and I just did his show. And he's talked a lot about, sex workers or, sleeping with like trans people and stuff like that. And it's offensive, edgy, graphic stories, but it's true to him. Whereas there were a bunch of comics who looked up to Norton who weren't as good, who would just be like, so I'm fucking a hooker. And it's not authentic. It's like, oh, you're trying to put the offensive words kind of together, like Mad Libs it almost.
Sure.
And so, but being around these comedians here, I just forgot. I mean, dude, like, it's a cliche, but it's like you see people talking about race in a comedy club. I mean, I did this improv show at the Creek in the Cave the other day. And I would have Woke Jamie would have never done this, but it was a random. You just picked out a topic from a hat and you would riff on it.
Okay.
And mine was race, and there was which was great. And yeah, I made a joke where I was like, finally, which made the audience very tense. But then there was this fucking white girl dating a black guy in the front row, and I just got to do this fucking whole bit about like, okay, let's ask them. And of course, I only asked the white girl about her thoughts on race. And it just became this almost. But again, if you took some of the lines I said out of context,
it sound horrible.
It sound pretty rough.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one was happier in that audience than the black dude. Because again, it was subversive stuff. It was like, yeah, of course we're gonna ask the white lady about like the plight of black people, and like I kept like shushing him, and like it was so fucking fun and cathartic. And actually, if you look at it, like I mean, it was coming from a very progressive place. But if you just took some of the lines out of context, where it was just like, no, she's fucking a black guy, so she gets to speak on it, and like we elevated her, and it was so fun. And I just forgot about that freedom in a club. Whereas if any of that happened on Twitter.
Oh, God.
I mean,
because it can all be taken out of context, and that's the difference, right?
All of it. All of it. And you have people looking to do that. You have people specifically being like, I'm going to look at something Ross said to pull it to fucking get him in trouble, or I'm going to take the, because they're just sad and lonely and psychopaths.
I'll give you a story that touches on this exact topic. When I, a few months ago, I had a little bit of internet, I wouldn't call it beef. There was just a slight conflict between me and the owner of Barstool Sports, okay? And as a result, his whole fan base came after me for a good 48-hour period.
I mean, they seem chill.
Yeah, and I'm very familiar with them because that used to be my fan base way back in the day.
Right,
and
I'm friends with Robbie from Barstool, I think.
Oh, I like that guy.
Robbie's
He's
great.
cool. They're MMA guy? Yeah. Yeah, I've been following him since he joined there, actually.
Little fucking pop punk nerd. And
he became like friends with Conor McGregor, like literally through doing the job and
so
over and
famous
over.
so fast. And he's just a nerd. I love it. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so this random fan of theirs dug up the only tweet in my entire timeline that featured half of the N-word, and it wasn't from me.
Sure.
Was it
the good half?
It was the bad half. I don't know which half is the best half.
I'm just kidding. There's no good half.
Hold on, let's break it down. Which half is the good half?
Yeah.
But when this person found this tweet, and then they started replying to all of my tweets with a screenshot of this tweet, which was actually somebody that I went to college with using that word.
Oh, yeah.
That I quote tweeted. And I'm just seeing it on every single one of my tweets going, what the fuck is this person doing?
Yeah, by the way, I have a psychopath who does that with some of my stuff, so brace for that when this episode comes out.
Oh, I'm looking forward to meeting them. They sound lovely. But there is a massive constituency of people who that is their only concern at this point, is if they can find anything about you and use it to flame you off the face of the earth. And for whatever reason, we've all become the social justice police, especially on Twitter, right?
And this is what's the most frustrating. Is if it was actually for social justice, okay. But, and I don't talk about this because I don't want to give anybody time and space, but it's very interesting where the two stalkers of mine who will so when I got divorced, I had this fucking affair. And because I was this big feminist guy, it became like fodder, right? Where it's just like, oh, preachy feminist guy is like a piece of shit.
Because that didn't fit with your public persona or whatever, yeah.
And it was stupid. I regret it, blah, blah, blah. I've talked about it a ton.
No, let's get back into that. Take it. No, I'm just
yeah, from the beginning. Okay. So one of the dudes who sends this shit around, my lawyer just found out has had fucking women go to the police about him.
Yeah, it's always somebody with their own issues.
Right. And so it's like, if you were actually doing this for women, you know what I mean?
Right.
But the fact that you could get canceled by a guy who's not doing it because he thinks you're a threat to black people, or someone thinks that I'm a danger to women, but it's just sick fucking people who, instead of dealing with their bullshit, are going to project it and try to take someone down. And again, on a much more micro level, that's kind of what I, without knowing it, was doing, where I was so miserable and I was so depressed, and then I would see someone fuck up online
and focus on that.
And I would just jump on that, and then I'm getting validation because my tweet was funny about them. And you know,
and it's a bad cycle, because that's the thing, is you get this positive reinforcement if, you know, not necessarily with the jackasses that we're talking about harassing us right now, but you get a positive reinforcement if you're going after somebody and you're pointing out, look how wrong this person is. And then the idea is that makes you look better.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. And ever since I stopped doing that, it's like I've started, like, I'm healthier. I meditate. I go out into nature. I do more jujitsu. Like, I'm actually just doing shit that is good for me.
Well, focusing on you. Yeah.
The more confident I become in me, the better person I become. Like, I honestly think that no matter how many fucking retweets I got when I was a political shit stirrer or whatever, the fact that I actually put my phone away and make conversation with the person who's checking me out of the grocery store, I'm probably doing a better job making their day than I ever did actually stopping injustice because of my funny tweet.
And the internet can be misleading in that way, right? Where it's like, I mean, there's a, not to reference Kanye out of nowhere, but there's a Kanye West line where he says,
don't use the N-word,
like
buddy.
crowdsourcing Instagram, or no, checking Instagram comments to crowdsource my self-esteem.
Oh,
and that hit me in the face, because it was
Jesus.
like, it's that everybody does that on some level. I'll give you an example. This past weekend, I went to a wedding.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a big deal, because it was me and a bunch of guys that Jared and I used to work with. So our internet fan base was really stoked on it. And one of the photos of us got like hundreds and hundreds of comments from all these people who were so stoked to see us together. And I found myself checking the comments like every half hour.
Yep, I've done that.
And then last night at some point at like 10:30, 11 p.m., I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I don't even know these. Like, I don't. It's different. I don't know these people. They're commenting on a photo that doesn't mean anything in reality. It's just the internet.
Dude, I did the exact same thing. I remember this just hit me like a fucking ton of bricks. So we were poor growing up. I dropped out of high school. I'm one of 5. Every child after me got like progressively better. You know what I mean? So like next one dropped out, but got her GED, then ended up like getting her master's, blah, blah, blah. Next one went to college. Next one went to an Ivy League, but dropped out. Final one graduated from Harvard. So we're all there. He graduates from Harvard. I write some post on Facebook, and yeah, someone famous, I think it was like a host of MSNBC or something, she shared it and it ended up blowing up. And I remember I kept trying to show him. So not only was I doing what you were doing, but I was looking, but I was like, isn't this cool? Isn't it cool? And he's like, look. I don't give a shit. He's like, put it away and like be with us. And I was like, oh, right. And that was like the height of but I mean, it's so hard because, you know, I think to also give the benefit of the doubt, my friend, this guy, Johan Hari, you would actually love this book, wrote a book called Lost Connections. Okay. And it's all about mental health. And it was the only book, it was blurbed by Tucker Carlson and Hillary Clinton. So to show you like...
That is difficult to
pull
off.
And like Elton John, like to show you how fucking, wide-reaching it is. And it pretty much talks about that one of the reasons that we're so depressed is we've lost connection, right?
Right.
And so because and that was pre-COVID.
Right.
So because we've lost connection with the outside world, we just we get it online. And so we think that we are doing the healthy things. When you're checking that, there is part of your brain and body that goes, I'm connecting with people.
This is awesome.
Yeah, but it's not, right? And I think when you do start saying hi to your neighbors or people at the grocery store or starting conversations with people at coffee shops, and like I've really been focusing on that, and I've had some of the coolest, sweetest interactions like at airports or with my waiter or whatever. And man, those are so much more fucking rewarding. And then add that other layer where it's like me and you also make a living off it.
And that's the thing is it's for guys like us, it's complicated because, and Jared and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, especially the past like couple years, like trying to get our screen time down and trying to stay more connected in real life and present. And for us with our jobs, I make the joke all the time, like the second that I am done with this, I'm throwing my fucking phone into the woods and none of you are ever going to hear from me ever again.
I used to say that when like the year Robin was helping me, I call the year I was almost famous, and I had like a bunch of meetings in LA with like, you know, general meetings with like television places and agencies and stuff. And they were always like, so like, what's your goal? And I was like, to get famous enough to get off social media and live in the woods. And they were like, cool, we can do nothing with that. That is the opposite of what I just completely cluster bombed all of those meetings. But that was it. And I think you can do, there's this guy named Cal Newport who he has this huge TED Talk with like millions of views all about getting off social media. And he's always quoted by like Huberman and Lex Friedman. He's just Tim Ferriss. He's just friends with all those dudes. And me and him actually went to high school together.
Oh, no
and
shit.
I did his podcast recently. It hasn't aired yet, but I asked him where I'm like, buddy, I know your solution for everybody, because he all best-selling books. I think Digital Minimalism is what the last one was called, but it's about getting the fuck off social media and how much happier it makes you. And so for like the three of us, like we know that. We know we would be happier, right? But like we have to do it. And so at the end of the podcast, I was like, what can I do?
Right.
What is the middle ground of I have to do this? And he gave some really good tips where he's like, you can, you know, with your phone, plug it in like it's an old school phone, put the ringer on, so if someone calls you, like when you're at home,
treat it like it's an old school fucking...
Yeah, just you're not sitting there. Like when you have to work, you have to work. When you have to post, you have to post. But not... I'm not even paying attention to the movie. I'm just scrolling. You can put it over there. He's like, post from your laptop, so you can take it off. You know, if I have a tweet, I have a funny topical tweet, I have an Instagram video. I'm going to post both of those from my laptop. All done.
Right.
I'm done now.
Right.
You know, and I took his advice for like a month, and I was much happier. And now I have a breakup, and I have to get money, and I'm back to social media.
You're back, baby!
I have stopped meditating. I am back, baby, filled with anxiety and caffeine.
Zuckerberg sucked you right back in.
Sure did.
How long have you been doing stand-up? Like
I dropped out of high school and started stand-up at 17.
At 17 years old.
Yeah.
And when you dropped out, did you move out to LA or did you start where you were?
I started so I wanted to be in a band. I did not want to be a comedian. And I actually have this music project finally fucking coming out with one of the guys from Under Oath and O'Teal, the bass player from Dead & Company, which I'm doing weird spoken word over it.
Okay.
It's coming out in a couple weeks. I'm so fucking excited about that. I love music more than comedy. Wanted to be in a band.
I love music more than almost anything, yeah.
Anything. I was in this like hippie stoner fucking jam band where literally we just watched The Simpsons, smoked weed, and then like went to like fish shows. And we were named after a Simpsons reference. We were named Pray for Mojo after Homer's helper monkey. And I naturally thought Pray for Mojo was going to be huge. We were in New Jersey, and like our big gig was like we opened for a band who opened for Blues Traveler, and I was like, "This is it, baby. We did it. We're fucking doing it." And so I called a band meeting and was like, "All right, we got to talk about touring and merch." And they were all like, "We have to go to college," and I was just like, "This is fucking bullshit, whatever." And I didn't sing; I just played guitar. But I was already failing out of school. I knew that I was supposed to do some sort of art something. And I literally went into comedy because I was like, no one can leave me. Like, that was my sad entry to comedy. It was trauma. And that's why whenever people, like, if you're funny, you come from trauma. If you're funny or you know how to fuck, you come from trauma.
I think anybody creative in general, like, you got to have some kind of trauma for that to be really harnessed.
100%. Like, when people are like, how do you structure a joke? I'm like, an alcoholic mom. Like, that's all I know how to, like, that's how you do it. You just do it with sadness. And so I started taking the train in from Jersey to do open mics in New York. And so I did that probably for like a year or two, then moved to New York, like illegally squatted for a year. You would do open mics. Then they would have these scam shows where they're called bringer shows, where not only do you not get paid, you have to bring a certain amount of paying customers
to be able to perform.
Yeah. And by the way, you're not bringing them to like a good comedy show.
Right.
You are conning your friends into a 2-drink minimum, a cover charge for like 3 hours of racism, just like open mics, like open mic comics just being fucking racist. And so I did that for a little bit, and then I ended up.
Sounds kind of like Amway or like a pyramid scheme.
It is a pyramid scheme, 100%. And then so the next pyramid scheme was, I think Pete Holmes, he has a show about this, but me and Pete Holmes would hand out flyers outside of the Boston Comedy Club in New York. And you would, for no money, from like 6 p.m. to 1 in the morning, hand out flyers on the street corner. At no point were we like, yeah, maybe we should unionize. It was just completely just like free labor. And then we would get 5 minutes at the end of the show, which usually, you know, Chappelle would come by, do fucking an hour. All the audience would leave except for like the 2 foreign people who didn't know who Dave Chappelle was. We would bomb for them. And then that happened for fucking years. But it was also... You know, I spent those years getting to, you know, like I went up in front of like Mark Maron, and then Mark brought me out to open for a while. I got to watch Patrice O'Neill every night, Chappelle every night. I mean, I remember when Chappelle went to Africa and all these dipshits on the news were like, it's drugs. He's
lost his mind.
No, I was there every night.
They literally said he was smoking crack.
They said he was smoking crack. Yeah. And I was there every night. And what would happen was Dave Chappelle would stop by. He was doing heavy. Some of his best material that I've never seen on a special. Stuff about the war in Iraq, stuff about, like, he had one bit about the war in Iraq that I wish I fucking remembered that, I mean, almost brought me to tears. And the club was downtown around the corner from the Comedy Cellar, and so it was by NYU. This is Haida Chappelle show, and he would be doing this bit about Iraq, and some white frat boy would go, do Rick James. And he would literally have to explain. He'd be like, no, I'm talking about this. And then someone else would go, I'm rich, bitch. And he would go, these are different things. Like, I'm doing stand-up now. That's a television show. And that would happen every single night. He was the first comedian I ever saw walk around with a bodyguard. He had this huge fucking Russian dude. And I mean, I'd done shows where like Chris Rock would stop. I've never seen someone with a bodyguard. But that's how fucking crazy it was. I was like, yeah, if I had a bunch of white frat boys screaming, I'm rich, bitch, I would smoke crack. I would actually smoke crack.
Every single white person I knew, every single one of my friends in high school watched that show. Yeah. Quoted the lines, yelled out the sketches. Like, and I mean... I
would use the bad half of the N-word.
For sure. And I didn't understand the... well, some of them. I didn't understand the whole situation with him until much later in life. Like, when he bounced, I was just like, my favorite show's gone. Fuck that guy. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And then way later in life, I was like, oh, this was an incredibly complicated situation for this man where he had to make a judgment call and walk away from tens of millions of dollars in the name of...
badass decision.
For himself, right? Yep. For him and what he thought was best for also... comedy.
By the way, to bring this back to the sort of political conversation of like free speech and edgy stuff. Yeah, everyone, I know the audience was waiting for it. It's like, I hope he fucking ties it to the military industrial complex. But what's so crazy is how nuts was it that this year the people hyping up Dave Chappelle were like Ben Shapiro.
Okay,
like,
what? Yeah, that's in that whole space.
But this is how wild, like, comedy should just be separate. Comedy should just be fucking separate from politics. But that was so wild, where I'm like, these fucking racist motherfuckers are hijacking this because the left's mad at Dave for an LGBT thing, and so they're gonna jump on and act like they're pro Chappelle, even though I'm sure they fucking loathed Chappelle years ago. Like, it's just, it goes back to, people just, can he be, exactly what you said. Is he on our team now?
Claiming
Can we claim Dave Chappelle? And it's garbage.
I see this with Rogan every day now.
Yeah.
Every day. Where I'm just like, I don't think he actually cares who the fuck you are or your opinion at all. And it's just, that's what makes this time so strange. And like, I have a question. So the pandemic changed a lot of things, obviously, and kept everybody inside. As a stand-up, did that just like obliterate open mic nights for a while? Like, what was the situation in terms of comedy clubs?
I actually asked some local guys about that last night, and they said it was kind of nice because it weeded out a lot of the shitty comics who didn't give a fuck. I kind of
figured that might be the case.
I mean, you can't do it like on Zoom. That would an open mic on Zoom would be even more bombing than an actual open mic.
Imagine. I'm so proud. The entire pandemic, I never did a Zoom show. Well, I just focused on, I didn't have an Instagram till COVID. And I just started making sketches because I was like, it was something I always wanted to do. And my old management, again, like, I was just sort of back in the day known as like the new kind of edgy Bill Hicks dude. And so anytime I was like, hey, I kind of want to do sketches, or I'd have like a sillier idea or want to talk about mental health, it'd be kind of like, ugh. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to make it myself. And so I just use that to do a comedy adjacent thing, which was cool because I actually think it's made my stand-up better because it was just a new medium where
Right.
I didn't have to be serious. I didn't have to be self-righteous or preachy. And I feel like I discovered my comedy voice by doing these sketches, because sketches sort of give you permission to not necessarily be yourself. And when I noticed the theme to all of my sketches, whether it was a sketch about doing mushrooms, whether it was a sketch about jujitsu, whether it was the ones I found the funniest were when I was just playing an unstable man on the ledge, just trying to keep it together. And I was like, ooh, that is so funny to me. And then I was like, that is more of my personality than screaming about politics on stage. And so now, going back to stand-up after COVID, I am being way the fuck more vulnerable. I mean, dude, if you asked me 10 years ago, again, when I was smoking cigarettes and like talking about George Bush and shit, if I would ever talk about relationships on stage, I'd be like, oh, that's fucking hacky, blah, blah, blah. I think the edgiest shit I'm doing right now, I think this is the edgiest stuff I'm doing right now. And it's not stuff that, I mean, shit, I talked about drone strikes on Conan, got in a lot of trouble. And but I honestly think now, I mean, the majority of my set is about sex and relationships,
Right.
because it is what I'm thinking about all day. It is what I am going through. It is me trying to be cool and dating girls in their 20s and then being like, oh fuck, I can't date girls in their 20s. It's these like it's these wild sex stories when really like all I want to do is fucking fall in love and like find a wife, and like I'm actually like this stupid romantic that gets me in trouble. I want to talk more about codependency and shit like that. And I'm like, oh, this is actually way braver than just fucking screaming about the war, which at the time I thought I was just fucking this iconoclastic, rebel.
I can identify with the feeling.
Yeah.
And it's funny because once you get into like your real self and using that as your material, you see how much easier it is to connect with your audience with it, and how much
yes.
feedback you get, and how much easier it is for your audience, more importantly, to connect with you, right?
Yeah.
Because when you're just up there yelling about like, I mean, depending on the circumstances, let's just use 9/11 as an example. You're up there railing about 9/11. It's like, there are
I was
two
pro
responses.
9/11, by the way.
Yeah, sure, of course. There are two responses to that in the audience, and there's really only those two.
Yeah.
Either people agree with you or they absolutely hate what you're fucking saying because it rubs them the wrong way politically, socially, morally, whatever. And that sucks. There's no room there for actual like meaningful entertainment, right? So I am betting that over the past 2 years, it's something like 50% plus people who do this job who have fallen into that pit, who have been like, I've got to give my social takes. People need to know what I think about race, sexuality, cancellation, the LGBTQ plus community.
And then they can claim me.
And then,
yes.
they can claim me. And that's the weirdest thing about it, is that I have never found, because like there was a point where I was like, man, all these right-wing people are leaving, but it's going to be fine because I'm going to get claimed by the left and they'll pick me back up. That never fucking happened.
No, of course not.
It never happened. There was nobody on the other side. It was just the anger and the dismissal and the like, in a way, a cancellation.
Yeah.
There was no reprieve from that.
So let me ask your advice then, because you're doing well still.
Sure.
And I feel like everything you're saying is what I want to do. I've gotten more DMs on fucking Instagram from people who are like, hey, you saved me from killing myself. Just because I'll talk about mental health, even just in my Instagram stories.
Right.
And by the way, not even anything pressing. Sometimes it's just like, hey, I'm sad. And people
Today's
are like,
been a rough day.
I mean, and that helps people, which
Enormously.
I forget about.
It's crazy.
And when I was a political lefty shit stirrer, my podcast with no sponsors, this is like pre-divorce, made like 12 grand a month, right? And now I believe my Patreon is at $1,000 a month. And like I know that what I am doing is better for humanity. But there is something about when you are that political shit stirrer and people do want to claim you, they go, they will give you money.
Right.
And they will go like, well, he's fighting for my cause, or he's saying the things I'm afraid to say. And
like a political donation.
yeah. And I mean, I remember when, after the divorce, when the left didn't want me, all these right-wing people came. And if I wrote a book called From Feminist to Freedom Fighter, I would be a billionaire. I would have my own show on Fox News. I would be a fucking billionaire. And in my head, I was like, no, I'm going to try to be a better person. I'm going to talk about mental health. Like, yeah, the premise of A Fuck Up's Guide to the Universe is like, hey, it's a self-help podcast, I guess, where we talk about all the things, but it's from this position of like, I don't know, I've made mistakes. My advice is good because I've done the opposite. Let me help you with it, you know? And I think it is better for humanity. But I also will have days when I'm struggling, whether it's financially or whether it's after this breakup, where I go, should I have fucking done that? Should I have been a fucking right-wing version of this left-wing me? Or should I double down on the left-wing stuff or whatever? And I know as an artist, you can't. As an artist, it's like, you just have to be authentic. But yeah, like, how did you do that? Because it is frustrating when you go, well, doing the right thing is making me less money. Like, how long do I keep taking the high road if the high road is going to lead to like welfare?
Right. If the high road leads to like homelessness and despair, then it's like, how the fuck is this something that I can actually stick with?
And then your brain gets tricky where you go, well, you know what? If I do this and that makes me some more money, I can probably make more of an impact. So maybe I just do this for a little bit. And that's when people start to fucking, you know,
you lose yourself in that shit though.
No good.
That's the thing that's always kept me from being tempted to, I guess, sell out is the word
for sure
that would describe. Because it's like, yes, there are things that I think all entertainers, content creators can identify that they're like, if I did this, I know there would be this massive response.
Yeah.
But the easy thing for me is to look at the other side of that and go, yeah, but I would fucking hate myself.
Right.
So it's not worth it if in the end I have to sacrifice what's actually important to me, which it just gets difficult, man, especially with the political and social shit, because, like, don't get me wrong, I still come in most weeks and there's something in the news that I wish I could talk about. But then I try to remind myself that there are other people out there doing that are much better at it. You know, what's last week tonight? John Oliver is my favorite example. I really like that dude. Great. He does a really good job breaking shit down, and yes, he's definitely left leaning, but that just helps me remind myself, like, I don't have to go be the dude who talks about, you know, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine every week. I don't have to talk about Biden. I don't have to talk unless there's something that actually perfectly fits into my world of content, the things that I'm interested in.
I literally said that exact thing when Russia-Ukraine started, where I was just like, I don't want to use that for a clickbaity title. I was like, I don't know what I can do right now, but I know I can help you guys feel better about, because that's the other thing is, I think it was Cal who said this to me. It was either Cal or I'm friends with those guys, that podcast, The Minimalists, and maybe it was one of the hosts of The Minimalists, but they were like, dude, if you stay on this path, you are actually ahead. And I would say you guys are too. You're actually ahead because everyone is getting so sick of tribalism.
Yes.
That within 5 years, people are going to want more apolitical, just be funny, try to help each other, you know, be nice content.
Fuck, I hope so.
And because I'm just like, well, can they send me money now?
Yeah, to that point, I mean, that's kind of where we're at with politics, right? It's like, okay, I know that if I was a moderate independent who ran for president, 80% of the country would agree with me, but I'm never going to get to the point where they can vote for me if I'm not a Republican or a Democrat.
Right.
So like, and nobody can make that sacrifice because they go, oh, I cannot win if I'm not Republican or Democrat, which is just self-fulfilling.
Tulsi Gabbard's a friend of mine, and literally she'll say some stuff that the left agrees on and some stuff that the right agrees on, and we go, all right, how do we feel about her? And they're like, she's a Russian spy, and it's like, all right, you fucking psychos, Jesus Christ. Anytime you try to show nuance, it's like like I remember covering like the Nader campaign, and you know, Nader would say stuff that 99% of Democrats agreed with that Gore was not for. And then you go, who are you going to vote for? And they're like, Gore, Nader's a fucking, you know, he's going to ruin the election. He's the reason that we got Bush. It's like, but you agree with him. And yeah, exactly.
They also say she's an Indian spy. It's important to know.
There's a lot of stuff. She's just like my little buddy. It's very whenever I see her trending, and I was like, oh, is my buddy who we're voice memoing right now about vegan recipes? She's a Russian spy. Okay, cool.
How long have you been doing jujitsu?
Also kind of since I was like 17, but I took
For a very long time.
When I started to make a living with comedy, I took probably like a 6-year break just to like get fat and smoke cigarettes. Oh my God. Although I was smoking, this fucking peer pressure stuff does not go away, where ever since I've been going at comedy hard for the last 2 weeks,
Right.
I'm like, I guess I got to drink and smoke cigarettes again.
Yeah.
And I've just been like, I finally went back to train this morning. But I am still very much what scene am I around? What do I have to do for you to like me person? Where if I'm just doing jujitsu, I'm training twice a day, I'm eating clean. And then, I was just at the clubs all weekend. And yes, I don't even think I don't like smoking cigarettes, and I smoked so many cigarettes. But anyway, so I've been doing it for a long time.
What my lawyer's been trying to get me to, he's like a good friend of mine, but he's been trying to get me to do jujitsu.
Yeah.
What is like so here's what I mean. I've done yoga, right? A whole bunch of yoga.
Yep.
And I understand the appeal of yoga. It brings you peace, you get stretched out, your body feels much better afterward.
Sure.
There's a lot of release. It's like meditation. What's the jujitsu sell though? Because like it's been a really long time since I wrestled around with another dude.
Well, you're still on a mat, but you're just getting suplexed.
You're just getting beat up. So for me, I failed gym class. Like actually failed, and people think that's hyper. It's not. You get stoned and pretend you forgot your shorts.
Never mind, it's quite easy.
Yeah. I was just like, I don't have my shorts, and they were like, well, we're pretty sure it's in your backpack. I'm like, well.
You do need shorts to pass, sir.
Yeah, and I would just sit on the bleachers high and just watch people. Like, it's fucking dumb. And but I loved fighting. I grew up on like 90s martial arts movies and The Simpsons. Like that's what made me. So when I could start, MMA, and back in the day too, MMA was lawless. UFC was illegal in most states.
Right.
It wasn't like it is now. Like it was underground. Like I would steal UFC VHS tapes from the same section that they had porn in. It was literally just underground cage fighting. If you watch the first couple UFCs, they were like only taped in like Alabama because that was like the only state
that could sign off on it.
fucking legalize it. Yeah, and so I started doing MMA where I'm like, well, I'm not athletic, but I love fighting. So for me, it was, I want to learn a skill. And then as you sort of see it, one, as an art form, where it's really beautiful. When you watch high level mixed martial arts or jujitsu, like it's fucking, jujitsu actually attracts more people like us, more sort of like nerdy types.
Right.
A lot of the alpha bros who come into the gym to try a class, I used to be even smaller than I am now, where the coach would always put me with them, essentially to prove jujitsu works. Like, let's take this little fucking pussy, and and I would go with them.
So they'd be like, oh, this little guy, I'm going to throw this dude like 20 feet.
Right, and then I'd strangle the fuck out of them.
Right.
And a lot of the alpha dudes, they don't come back.
Because that shit's emasculating.
It's emasculating. But that's what I love about jujitsu. It is ultimate like peer-reviewed material where you can either, some of the best UFC fighters, BJ Penn, so many of them have a story where I showed up, I thought I was tough, a girl choked the shit out of me with her legs, and I said, well, I don't know how to fight. How do I do that? I sign up, right? And those are the people that become great. Same with stand-up. Stand-up, you literally, someone just asked me advice on it this weekend. I was like, you bomb for 8 years. If you're willing to do that, you will get good. But you are no matter how smart you are, no matter how funny you are, no matter how insightful, something horrible happens to you when you stand up in front of a mic where you just sound like you're doing a bad Andrew Dice Clay impersonation, and you are bad for years. If Michelle Obama did an open mic, she'd be like, I'm fucking Barack in the ass, and people would be like, boo.
What the fuck?
It would be it's so weird.
And every comic will tell you this too. It's like there's no exception to the rule.
And I don't know why
crazy.
8 is the number, but it's the number, 8 years. And so same with jiu-jitsu. So you either get beat up and you go, I want to learn that, which already you're on the path to be a better person. Because there's no excuse. You tap out when something's about to break or when you're about to go unconscious. And then you can either go, well, fuck that guy or whatever. Or you can go, oh, how did you catch me in that? Oh, I left my arm in there. Okay, next time I'm not going to leave my arm in there, whatever it is.
And now you've learned.
Yeah, and so those big guys, you see them and they either quit and go, yeah, well, if this was Krav Maga, if I could fucking squeeze his balls, if I could rake his eyes. And you go, okay, bud. Like, you go think that for the rest of your life. Or you go, yeah, I want to learn this thing.
Right.
And that's it. That's what attracted me to it. It really was.
The growth of it.
It's the growth. It's the art. It's the, and then also I'm girly as fucking hell. The reason I think that these relationships move too fast is because, and I've been told this, and this is why I just can't casually date. I always just end up moving so fast, which plays into my codependency, is they're like a guy who talks about his feelings. And what's nice about me not doing anything manly is the one manly thing I do is the manliest thing, where I'm like, I fight men. And so then that gives me permission to be a little girl in the rest of my life.
I don't have that thing, though.
As a Simpsons fan, did you partly get into jujitsu so you could strangle people and say, "Why you little?
Why you little?" Yeah. That was it.
The Bart strangles all the
They
time.
stopped that not too far into the series when they realized it was slightly problematic.
Did they really?
Yeah.
I feel like that shit went deep. Like, I was like 20 still seeing Homer choke out his kids.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot
Most
of child
beloved
abuse.
cartoon dad in America just has a vice grip on his son's neck. Bart's eyes are just flying out of his head.
Yeah. I mean, well, to be
Slightly.
fair, Bart was asking for it.
He was quite
yeah,
often.
Dude, the kid was a problem.
He was.
Jamie, you publicly struggled with depression and, suicidal ideations and imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
That specifically, my audience is relatively familiar with the first two things because of me and my lovely brain. But explain imposter syndrome to the people, if you would.
Sure. Imposter syndrome is when you started to say suicide. I was like, well, I technically didn't kill myself, so can I still talk about it? Like, imposter syndrome is no matter how good you get at something, you're kind of waiting for, like, someone to expose you or for the rug to get pulled out. And
like, you don't quite buy into your own shit even. Like, you don't quite believe that it's even real.
like, I've had so many people, heroes of mine, in the last 2 weeks since I've gotten back to comedy, say on their podcasts, like, dude, you were one of my favorite comedians. I'm so glad you're back. And I was like, what? Why didn't you tell me? Like, I didn't know. I thought I was hated.
I've been out there almost dying.
Yeah, like, I thought you hated me, or I thought, same with fighting. I was teaching Tulsi's sister, actually. She does, like, protection detail for Congress people. And I was teaching her jujitsu here in Austin, and I made some passing comment where I was like, I think we were talking about diet or something, and I was like, well, I mean, I'm not an athlete, but, and she goes, you're not an athlete? I literally am coming in here for you to teach me how to fight, but to me, it's like, I'm not an athlete.
You don't
or
qualify
I'm not,
yourself.
Right. Even though I've been fighting for, however long. And it's fucking brutal. I mean, there's part of me that thinks it's also made me the artist I am, which, I mean, that we can talk about on another
that
episode.
Shit kills
where it's
me.
so insidious, where it's just like, well, I guess I got to be depressed, or I guess I got to smoke cigarettes, or I guess I got to because that's what's going to make me a fucking, artist. And it's like the people who are like, I'm a writer, and you're like, what have you written? They're like, nothing, but I'm an alcoholic, like Hemingway, and you're like, great. And it, when I teach other people jujitsu, I got to come up with different analogies because I think both these people have been canceled. Where I go, you have to have like a Woody Allen self-hate with, with a Kanye, with a Bill Cosby, just kidding, with a Kanye West swagger, right?
Sure.
Where it's like you have to be. The goal is to be self-critical as an artist without being self-hating, and then to be confident without being cocky.
And those are fine lines.
Fine fucking lines.
Yeah, I beat the shit out of myself most of my life, where I fucking hated myself internally, and it was a huge piece of my, the entertaining shit that I do or whatever. And only in the last, really since I got divorced and started taking therapy seriously instead of just going to therapy and then leaving and thinking I had accomplished therapy. I used to treat therapy like a podcast. Like, I'd go in and talk for an hour and be like, are you entertained? And she'd be like, we didn't do anything.
She's like, why did you do 2 ad reads?
Yeah, I was just going to say, rate and review on iTunes, please.
What the fuck was that? Dad, please tell your friends about the show. But I finally got to a place where I was like, it's almost like you have to get so broken that you're like, all right, I'm ready to learn.
That's where I'm at right now.
I'm ready to learn what it is that actually brings you peace, because I know it's not beating my own ass and drinking nonstop and smoking cigs all the time and becoming a big overweight piece of shit like I did, because that didn't work. I did that, and even when I was doing it, I was able to do what you talked about earlier, which is like in my head I was like, yeah, but fuck it. This is what artists do, bro. And at that point, I hadn't even really done anything of note in my life to consider myself an artist. I just thought all this pain and hurt and self-hate and loathing, that's what drives the people that I respect the most in the world, the Robin Williamses of the world. That's the kind of thing that I look at that and I'm like, well, everybody that is great at what I want to be great at has these characteristics, so I'm going to lean into them. Right. And that was a really big mistake.
Yeah, well, because you forget about the other characteristics they have, right? You forget about like the work ethic. You forget about the drive.
Because you don't see any of that.
No.
Right?
Well, or I mean, if we want to like call ourselves out, it's like maybe we don't want to. Maybe we do just want to. Oh, I'm getting back into comedy. Should I write all day, or am I gonna like listen to Bert Kreischer, who is like a great friend of mine? This isn't bad mouthing him. And it's like, oh, he's talking about drinking. Maybe I'll just go do that part. Maybe I'll just go do the fun part, because you're sort of searching for that, you know, like, and it's funny because even so many of my favorite, I mean, like even like Bill Hicks and Mark Maron, they actually didn't get good until they got sober. You know, like that's what made them good. Some of the best comics in the world. I mean, David Tell's sober right now, has been sober for years, and it's like it just makes them better. When I write jokes, it's not when I'm drinking and smoking at night. When I write jokes, it's, you know, at 9 a.m. And so when I'm sober,
when you're most clear-headed,
when I'm the drunkest, and you know, so it's a story we tell ourselves. You know, the times I feel the best are when I'm doing jujitsu, when I'm being healthy. You know, and
it's just that weird self-destructive. It's like it's almost intoxicating. You know, once you've gotten a taste of that, like what. The first time that beating your own ass actually does result in good content or a good joke, that sucks, because it hooks you, and then you feel like that's the way you have to go. And for anybody listening that's still in that place, like, I mean, I can tell you similarly to what you just pointed out, guys that you know that have gotten sober, and then that's when they do their best work. Like, I've never been better at my job than I am right now. Yeah. Right now, not back when I was smoking like an ounce of weed a week, not when I was pounding 2 bottles of red wine a night and smoking cigs and miserable and married. Like it now.
When you were smoking cigs, you were really cool though.
I did look cool as shit.
You look cool as shit,
which is just an undeniable thing about cigarettes that everybody needs to accept, and I think we have.
Cool.
But
I have a leather jacket that I put on only when I'm smoking cigs.
See it, just double up, man. Yeah, the ultimate badass move. But yeah, so there's this thing about that's attractive, leaning into the darkness, and one time I went to a shaman who told me that I flirted with insanity, and I was like, I did. That is true. I literally tried, like right after my ex left, I tried to like drive myself. I was like, okay, well, it doesn't matter anymore. The wheels fell off, so I'm gonna see how far I can push myself out to the edge and see what happens. And I'm telling you, it's not good. And it takes forever to get back from, which is a thing about life that's just, it's frustrating. You feel like once you've grown as a person or learned massive lessons or gone through a divorce or been through like a loss in the family or whatever, that now you're so strong that nothing else could possibly knock you down.
Right.
There is always something else coming, and then you've got to be able to look at it as a challenge instead of like, well, God and life and the universe is just shitting all over me, and fuck it, I'm just going to go back to being a piece of shit.
Dude, I'm so glad you said that, where I want to say something about purpose, but what you just said made me think of something else, which is when I came back, so girlfriend and I broke up. I got rid of all my stuff for her. We lived together. She was like, move in. I wasn't taking comedy gigs because like she started to do the podcast. So we were like doing this together. And I was like, well, this is the fucking dream. Yeah. This is the dream. And I wasn't doing like stand up. Yeah. And breakup happens very suddenly. Suddenly I like don't have a place to live. Lost this girl that I thought I was going to fucking marry. Go to Hawaii for a couple weeks to like, I was going to just maybe even live there, where I was like, oh, you're going to get bangs post-breakup? I'm going to go fucking live on a farm on the Big Island. And so I did that. And then she starts texting me about like, you know, let's get back together. You know, she kind of sees like I'm killing it. I'm on the plane back. and she like talked to her friend, she said, and she's like, I think this is a bad idea. So I show up at like LAX with my little sad, stupid, cliche acoustic guitar and a backpack, and now suddenly like I don't have a place to live. I just look like a fucking inside Llewyn Davis. Like, and I'm like coming back to Austin. I'm like, why am I coming back here? It was horrible, and I was just so low, dude. And once I started doing comedy again, I was like, this is my purpose. And I've been so depressed and I've had rock bottoms, and even post the divorce. I mean, it was bad, but I was never like laser focused on like a purpose. I was always kind of still running and being like, should I do that? Should I do this? Whatever. And now, even though this is a rock bottom, like I'm struggling, I have to build myself back up. I've never felt so clear-sighted, happy, confident, which is insane.
Because you know what you're supposed to be doing, though.
And that's what
difference.
it is. And so that's what I was going to tell people listening, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, which is if you are going through it, you got to fucking find something that you're going towards. Because I mean, even with jiu-jitsu, right? If you're just going to the gym because you're like, my wife fucking thinks I'm fat, and so you're just begrudgingly like on a Stairmaster, it's like, you're not going to last, right?
Right.
But when I started jiu-jitsu, I was like, I want to learn how to fight. Like, this is a skill that I want to learn, right? Like, now with comedy, it's like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm going to throw everything into that. And you know how easy it has been to say no to women, like, that I know I shouldn't sleep with, or I know, like, it's been, because there's been a shocking amount since the breakup. It's so fucking easy.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. That's pretty much all I want to say on the show.
We got it in.
Guys, people are trying to fuck me. No matter
insane.
what you hear, people want to have sex with me. And but it's been incredible because I have this thing that I'm working towards.
Right.
That, and it gives you this fucking crazy faith. And if you have that crazy faith, you're gonna find a way. But if you're just sort of, you know, what you were talking about with the narrative, I could have said, the narrative could have been, I turn 40 next week and I'm homeless. I turn 40 next week and the last chance I had with a girl, she left me, because of course she did, because shit fucking sucks, and every time I think that I'm picking myself back up, you know, whatever. Like, that was in my head in the beginning. Or is it I turn 40 next week and this is when I fucking turn shit around. I turn 40 next week and I finally am going to stop fucking running from comedy. And I'm finally going to fucking honor what Robin said before he died. And I'm finally going to just have the balls to like just fucking push forward no matter how hard it is. And I'm doing that halfway through my life. Fuck yes. Because when the breakup first happened, I remember Tulsi's sister, she was trying to like cheer me up, where she was like, and I'm like suicidal and I don't know what to do and I'm fucking homeless. And she goes, she's like, Jamie, you're almost 40. You have half your life left. And I was like, don't tell me I have half my life left. I was like, tell me there's a pill I can take that'll end this, like not painfully. And
that sounds like so much more.
That's so much more of
take on.
this. No.
Right.
Please tell me about a clinic in Sweden where they fucking hook you up to like liquid psilocybin and you just drift off. But now I'm just like, now I get it. But man, it really, so much of it has to do with how you talk to yourself. It's like, if you have a breakup, you can either go, she was the one, I'm never going to find someone, or you can go, man, that was great, I learned a lot. Thank God this ended now, right? Thank God me and her didn't get married. Like fucking incredible. Like, and what did I learn from that? And also, you know, this is something I've been thinking about a lot with relationships, because Amy told me I was the first ex she didn't block, and I was like, thank you.
It's another win.
But also the fact that that's what we do with most relationships. Most relationships, people you have inside jokes with, pet names with, wake up every day, have some of the most intimate moments with, suddenly it's like, block,
delete all the photos.
I can't watch Lost anymore because it makes me think of fucking Diana. You know what I mean? Like,
no more listening to Seal.
Yeah, like all that shit. Yeah, I mean, some relationships are toxic and you got to do it. And like, trust me, I mean, I wanted to move to New York because I'm not psyched to see like Amy, like, not because I don't love her, but because I love her and I don't want to see, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Right. But also I want to get to the point where I am confident enough to be like, man, that was fucking awesome. And we taught each other a lot, and there were beautiful moments, and it ended, and now we get to go do more awesome things, and like that should be the goal. But fuck, it's hard.
It is, and I mean, you know, just to close out, you touched on self-talk and the way we talk to ourselves, and like I didn't even know what that fucking meant before 2019-ish. I had no idea, and it turned out I've been living my whole life talking to myself like the worst person in the world would talk to me, right?
Oh my
so like
God,
talking
I
to
know.
myself in a way that I would never speak to another human being, but that's how inside my head my narrative went with me every single day, where it was like no matter what I did, no matter what I said, no matter the accomplishment or how good of a day I had, it was always like, yeah, but you're a fucking piece of shit, dude, and nothing about you is redeeming, so do something else that's actually impressive because this wasn't it.
Oh, bro, my rock bottom with that, when I actually like realized it, is over COVID, I started reading, I mean, probably something super cliche like Tony Robbins. Like it was like the first time I heard about positive self-talk.
Just reading Don't Kill Yourself books.
Yeah. And it was that like rabbit hole of like YouTube where it's like, oh, you're looking up law of attraction a lot suddenly. And so I'm reading like Tony Robbins about like, you know, getting self-talk. And I go, okay, I just got to do positive self-talk. And unironically, I caught myself pacing in my apartment one day. I was trying to think positive and I couldn't. And I swear to God, suddenly I'm pacing and I go, just think positive, you fucking piece of shit. Like, why can't you think anything positive? And I am shitting on myself for not being able to think positive. And I had to be like, oh, okay.
In the middle of trying to.
Yeah. It was,
in the middle of trying to, and you'll catch yourself like,
brutal meta.
why have I attached all this negativity to it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
because I'm garbage, that's why.
Yeah, man, I've been there. That's one of the hardest lessons to learn. And it's like, it just like with jujitsu or stand-up comedy or getting better at anything else, mental health is all about repetition.
And isn't that wild that you feel silly for being nice to yourself? Like, how did we get to that place where it's like, especially with men, where it's like, oh, just being kind to myself is somehow weak.
Makes me a pussy.
So you're just gonna instead just beat yourself up and like then repress it all and fucking take it out on your girlfriend. It's like, no, that's the bitch move.
That shit's Hollywood to me. That's that idea. I think a lot of that was sculpted into us by what we watched in terms of like old school American manly, like what happened to Gary Cooper, as Tony Soprano would put it, like the strong silent type
just
thing.
punch a wall.
Yeah, that was always like drilled into our, I mean, I feel like it was at least mostly media, drilled into our brains through what we watched and absorbed and shit. And then at some point you just kind of hit, or at least some of us do, you hit an age where you look around and you realize that those strategies are not serving you at all.
No.
And you can really, to throw another weird little therapy cliche out there, like doing anything that doesn't serve you, which means that it's good for you or, you know, accomplishes something for you, is bad.
Yeah.
Like you should not be doing things that don't serve you. You shouldn't have thought processes that don't serve you or habits that don't serve you. And that's where when you grasp that concept, it's when a lot of the bullshit in my life started to fall away.
Yep.
Because it became really freaking obvious where I was supposed to be focused.
For sure. And like, you know, if I'm going to close with something on mental health, and I haven't said this in a while, I used to talk about this in my podcast a lot, but I feel like this is a good show to say it because I'm also talking to like you. It's so fascinating where whenever I meet people who are suicidal or depressed or whatever, I'm just like, you're cool. You're a person I want to stick around. It's never the assholes. Ted Cruz.
It's never somebody that you're like, oh God, I wish this dude really would off himself.
Yeah. Like Ted Cruz is gonna live for fucking ever, dude. The fucking tall guy who stands front row at a concert screaming "Freebird." Like that guy's a fucking vegan going to cryotherapy. Like he's stem cell, all that shit, all that Austin shit, and. You know, like a good analogy is I remember like when I would tour a lot, it was always just the loud drunk guy who would like stay at the merch table forever back in the day. And then I would get like a DM from some girl who's like, hey, I just really wanted to talk to you about like jujitsu and Simpsons, but you look busy. So I went home and I'm like, no. And I feel the same way with the people who write me about depression or suicide. They're like so fucking funny and insightful and sweet. And also remember, a lot of times people who are depressed, it's like we just feel deeper. We need fucking more of that in the world, right? Like we need more empathetic people. We need more people who can talk about emotions, who do feel, who fucking can cry at movies and like shit like that. And so I would just say, remember that. Where remember, like, you may feel like you're broken or you're wrong or incorrect, but like in a way, you're sort of the best of us. And I wish there were more people like that who did stick around, who did feel, and you just have to, again, all that love you show towards other people, super cliche, but yeah, you got to kind of show it to yourself and realize that, like, hey man, the shit you're upset about with yourself is actually like really sweet and cool and rare and necessary.
If you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else, Jared.
That's it.
Did you know? Jamie, thank you for joining us. It was great to finally meet outside of the metaverse. Man. We've accomplished it. We've done it. We've sat down in real life together. Where can we follow you on Instagram and Twitter?
Yes,
and
this is the big
plug yourself.
Save Jamie rebuild.
Yes.
You can follow me on Instagram at the Jamie Kilstein. You can follow me on Twitter, just at Jamie Kilstein. The podcast is called A Fuck Up's Guide to the Universe. We had the last two guests were like John Cleese from Monty Python, but then porn star Nicole Aniston came on to talk about my breakup. So it's wild and fucking all over the place. You got to come on too. And so that's called A Fuck Up's Guide to the Universe. And then, I mean, I will have that fucking music project, Light Scale, will be out in a couple of weeks. That's going to be fucking banana. Melissa Etheridge called me she somehow got the track.
Okay.
She called me on the phone and was like, I just want you to know me and my wife were crying in the garage. We were touched. So, and I was like, she called. She's like, this is Melissa Etheridge. Do you have a second? And I was like, yes, Melissa Etheridge. Like, it was super bizarre. So it's actually like a really cool fucking project. So that'll be out soon. But if you follow me on social media, I'll blast about that stuff. And I've been posting more stand-up and sketches and mental health shit. So yeah, follow me on social. Check out the podcast. There's a Patreon for the podcast, but I mean, like the podcast first, and then but the Patreon's patreon.com/Jamie Kilstein. If you're rich and just we're like, this guy's fucking on the ledge, patreon.com/Jamie Kilstein as well.
Thank you, Jamie. We'll talk more soon. Today's episode of RBP is also brought to you by Manscaped. Have you started spring cleaning yet? The carpets need cleaning, the drapes need dusting, and your lawn needs mowing. Spring has sprung, and the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming have the best tools for cleaning aisle 5 in your pants. Time to clear out your winter brush and join the other 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping when you use the code RBP at checkout. As in the Ross Bolen podcast, RBP. Manscaped has the full package you need for spring cleaning this year, the Performance Package 4.0. You get that, and then you will have everything that your boys need to look and smell like the fresh tulips your partner wants. To start off your spring cleaning, use the Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer to get the most precise shave on your downstairs mix-up. Did we mention it's waterproof as well? No need to worry about watering your grass with this tool, equipped with an LED light, so you know it'll be a major asset to the new shower routine if you shower in the dark. Clear your holes and smell the spring air with the Weed Whacker. I use this thing once a week on my nose and ears. It's an ear and nose trimmer with a proprietary skin-safe technology, which helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes. After clearing your nose, make sure to get rid of that foul ball smell with the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver. The Crop Preserver is an anti-chafing ball deodorant and moisturizer. The Crop Reviver is a spray-on toner for your balls because your balls need to be toned, and it keeps them from sticking to your leg and leaves them smelling like fresh flowers. Finish off your grooming routine with the Plow 2.0, the perfect razor for the finest shave on your face, because if you're using your Lawnmower 4.0 on your balls and your face, you are doing it wrong. You need a separate tool for that. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code RBP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code RBP at manscaped.com. Time to throw out your old hygiene habits and upgrade your life today. Thank you again for coming, or for tuning in, listening, downloading, whatever you did to gain access to today's show. And again, thank you to Jamie, our guest. Make sure you give him a follow. Make sure you check out his pod, check out his stand-up. There have been, probably a few dozen people who I've had the opportunity to speak with about depression and their own personal circumstances and struggles over the course of the past couple years, where my own personal circumstances and struggles got really heavy. And Jamie was one of the more consistent ones that I was able to kind of identify that we were going through something similar and lean on him and his DMs and vice versa. And we've just kind of developed that online relationship that eventually I was like, I got to get this guy in for a podcast. And obviously with my obsession with stand-up comedy, I was really looking forward to hearing it's like interviewing Jamie at this point in his career is almost like listening to The Game on a rap song. Like, he's going to tell you every single person that he knows, right? It just like name drops so many people where I'm like, wait, stop. Can we talk about Robin Williams for 30 minutes now? And it's just, there's so much material to be had that it's really difficult to make sure that we get it all into one show. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I know that was probably a little bit more, edgy than you're used to in terms of what we've done material-wise the last several months on RBP, and that's exactly what I wanted. I think that providing different voices on this outlet instead of just mine and Jared's all of the time is something that is very important to me and that I want to get back to now that we are post-pandemic. So as far as comics or guests or entertainers or writers or television, anybody that's in the creative space or the sports space or that you think I would be interested in that I would actually have a realistic shot of getting on the show, holler at me on social media and let me know who you want to see sitting in that chair across from me, sitting next to Jared and answering questions. Because, look, everybody is well aware of my perspective, and everybody who's listened to all 400 and however many episodes at this point is anyway, of my perspective and what I believe and sort of my ethos for why I do what I do. And I like bringing other people in to hear theirs as well, because that's how we all shape ourselves, right? And shape each other and help each other. And, we all make weird decisions and mistakes and have challenges in life and get whacked upside the head by the universe and then have to bounce back and learn and grow. And if we share those experiences with each other, then it gives us all the opportunity to perhaps do so a little bit more effectively. So very appreciative to Jamie for coming on today and being such an open book. That was great. Haven't had a guest in forever, man. COVID completely derailed our guest plans. And I like Zoom is okay. Don't get me wrong. We're probably going to do some Zoom with comics or guests who can't quite make it into the studio. But I prefer the in-person stuff. It's just much more personal, obviously, and intimate. So it was great to get somebody back in, or get a guest into the studio for the first time in forever. Check out our merch on bolenmedia.com/shop, where we've got hats and t-shirts and hoodies and crew necks and mouse pads and coffee mugs, all kinds of good stuff. And if you're on Patreon supporting our podcast, you get a 10% off code for that shop when you're on patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast, where every Friday we drop an ad-free premium edition of our show that is only available to our supporters right there on patreon.com /Ross Bolen podcast. So if you've been listening for years, like I listen every week to both episodes, there have been 3 episodes every week since time immemorial. One of them exists only on Patreon. And if you sign up today, you gain access to our entire backlog of all those episodes so that you can enjoy them as you see fit. So go today, Patreon, patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast. Follow us on TikTok at The Ross Bolen Podcast, on Instagram at The Ross Bolen Podcast, and on Twitter at Ross Bolen Pod. Follow Jared everywhere at Jared Borislow. Follow me at WR Bolen. And again, follow Jamie at the Jamie Kilstein on on Instagram, and at Jamie Kilstein on Twitter. At the Jamie Kilstein on Instagram, at Jamie Kilstein on Twitter, and check out a fuck up's guide to the universe wherever podcasts are played. Jared and I will be back on Wednesday with another episode of RBP. No guest, just our regularly scheduled programming with some all-time recurring segments and such. And then, of course, we'll be back Friday on Patreon with our ad-free exclusive show available only to those who support us on patreon.com/Ross Bolen podcast. Next Monday, we will have documentarian Bradley Jackson in the studio, who recently released a documentary called Facing Nolan that I was fortunate enough to get to go watch when it premiered at South by Southwest. I actually watched it sitting right behind Nolan Ryan. It was one of the coolest days of my life. And Bradley got to throw out the first pitch at a Texas Rangers game over the weekend. Then they screened his documentary Facing Nolan in the stadium, which is just incredible. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him, and I'm looking forward to y'all hearing that episode next Monday as well. But be back Wednesday and Friday this week, so I will hope to have you hear me then. I was going to say see you then, but we won't see each other. You'll only hear my voice or see me if you're on YouTube or whatever. But the point is, until next time, peace be with you, and also with you.